38 people. That's the number you've probably heard. 38 witnesses to a murder, and not one of them picked up a phone. For 60 years, that number has been used to explain something dark about human nature, that in a crowd we go cold. But almost everything you know about the story is wrong, and the real explanation is stranger and honestly more useful to know than the myth. Stick with me to the end, because the actual psychology here could change how you react the next time you see someone in trouble. Let's start with the story as it's usually told. March 13th, 1964. A 28-year-old woman named Kitty Genovese is walking home from her job managing a bar in Queens. It's just after 3 a.m. A man attacks her near her apartment building. The assault lasts, according to the late reporting, over half an hour, in two separate attacks, right outside the building full of sleeping neighbors. 2 weeks later, the New York Times ran a story with the headline that would echo through psychology textbooks for the next half century. 38 witnesses saw or heard the attack, and none of them called the police. The article painted a picture of a city, maybe a whole species, that had become numb to suffering. Apathy, it said, as a symptom of urban life. That story didn't just shock readers, it launched an entire field of psychological research. Two social psychologists, John Darley and Bibb Latanier, wanted to understand the mechanism, so they built an experiment. Here's what they actually did. Participants were placed alone in a room with an intercom, told they'd be having a discussion with other participants in separate rooms. No face-to-face contact, just voices. Partway through, one participant, actually a recorded actor, would start having what sounded like a seizure, gasping for help through the intercom. The variable being tested was simple. How many other people did the participant believe were also listening in? Sometimes they thought they were the only other person. Sometimes they believed there were 4 or 5 others. The results were striking. When participants believed they were the only witness, 85% left the room to get help within the first minute. But when they believed 4 other people were also listening, that number dropped to just 31%. The more people who were technically present, the less likely any single person was to act. Darley and Latanier called this the bystander effect, and the Genovese case became its founding legend, proof in one tragic package of what the lab just had measured. Here's the first crack in the story. In the decades since, journalists, historians, and eventually Genovese's own brother went back through the original police records and tried transcripts. What they found didn't match the article at all. Most of the 38 people named in the Times piece never saw the attack. Several only heard a brief, ambiguous sound in the middle of night, easily mistaken for a couple arguing or someone being sick, not a life-threatening assault. The attack also wasn't one continuous half-hour event in plain view. It happened in stages, partly hidden by a building corner, with the witnesses catching only fragments. And critically, at least one neighbor did call the police during the attack. The image of total, deliberate silence from 38 people who watched and did nothing simply wasn't accurate. It was a dramatic simplification that made for a gripping headline, and psychology, as a field, ran with it for 50 years before anyone seriously fact-checked the source story behind its most famous concept. So, does that mean the bystander effect itself is fake? No, and this is the part most debunking videos skip. The lab experiments have been replicated dozens of times across different countries and contexts, with the same basic pattern holding up. People are genuinely slower to help when they believe others are also present. The effect is real. It's the founding myth, the Genovese story as originally reported that was distorted. So what's actually happening if it isn't cruelty or apathy? Psychologists point to two mechanisms working together. The first is diffusion of responsibility. When many people could act, no single person feels the full weight of responsibility to be the one who does. The second, arguably more powerful, is pluralistic ignorance. Each person looks around, sees that no one else looks alarmed, and quietly updates their own read on the situation. If this were really an emergency, wouldn't someone else already be reacting? Everyone is calibrating off everyone else, and the group collectively talks itself out of alarm. You can see this play out in modern cases that have nothing to do with violence. Studies on public health emergencies, workplace accidents, even someone collapsing on a subway platform find the same pattern. It's not that crowds are cruel, it's that ambiguity plus company produces hesitation. Put the same person completely alone with an obviously injured stranger, and helping rates jump dramatically. Add a crowd and some uncertainty about what's happening, and everyone waits for someone else to move first. Which leads to the one piece of advice from this research that's genuinely useful and could matter someday. If you're ever the one who needs help in a crowd, don't shout, "Someone help me." A request aimed at everyone gets diffused into being aimed at no one. Instead, point at a specific person and say, "You, in the blue jacket, call an ambulance." Naming one person directly breaks the diffusion instantly and makes it that individual's responsibility, not the crowd's. The deeper lesson underneath all of this isn't really about apathy at all. It's about how we heavily rely on other people's reactions to decide what's real. A crowd doesn't make us colder, it makes us more uncertain, and uncertainty, multiplied across a group of silent, calibrating strangers, can look exactly like indifference from the outside, even when it isn't. If you want to see how the same pattern, a famous story that got simplified into something almost unrecognizable from the actual data, shows up again, our next video takes apart the Stanford prison experiment using newly released audio tapes that change the story completely. Subscribe so you don't miss it, and let me know in the comments. Have you ever frozen in a crowd in a moment like this yourself?